Here my whole life, and I've never seen anything near this.
Way worse than other storms. Nothing like this ever, so it blows my mind.
I've lived in the upstate for 29 years, and this is the worst storm I've ever lived through.
It's just absolutely heart-wrenching.
Hurricane Helene knocking down trees, entangling them in power lines, leaving linemen with hundreds of power poles and equipment to restore.
We're facing a devastation that I have not seen in the 30 years of my career at Aiken Electric Cooperative.
It was devastating. It was much more devastating than Hurricane Hugo back 40 years ago.
And the reoccurring theme is that this is nothing that has been seen before in the 84-year history of our company.
Hurricane Helene has caused significant damage to our entire distribution system. Trees down, wire down, wet conditions.
I can tell you there's some parts of the system that is so torn up that we're going to have to rebuild, not restore.
We are working every day, all day. It's 14 days straight. We all are tired. We are ready to get your lights on, but we are still working and we are doing the best we can possibly do.
I got called in 1:30 last Thursday morning. I really don't know what day it is now. It's strenuous for us and the community, but you know how linemen are. We want to serve the community. We know it's our job, but just bear with us. We're on the way. Just be patient with us. We're trying our best to get the power back on. There's a lot of line down, a lot of broke poles, a lot of area to cover. We're working as hard as we can. We're going to get it on as quick as we can.
We're ready to see our families, just like y'all are ready to get y'all's lights on.
It's hard. You see your whole community destroyed, and all we can do is really help each other. And they're working hard. These kids miss their dad. I know it's very inconvenient for everybody, but that's all we can do. All we can do right now is just lean on each other, lean on everyone, and just continue to pray.
Trucks are lined up here in Pickens County to finish restoring power to Blue Ridge members. But these trucks are not from our neck of the woods. They're from South Dakota.
And we left Wednesday morning. Took us 3 days to get here. Hauling these big trucks across the country takes a lot of work, a lot of breakdowns.
We have an army of outside crews and our own crews working. They will continue their restoration efforts until all services are restored.
I'm from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and my husband and I traveled down here. It feels good to be able to come in and help the community and get things restored to where it needs to be.
These guys from out of town are constantly working. They're constantly going, and our guys are constantly going. So everybody have the members in mind. So we're trying to do all we can to get them back on.
I promise you, and I promise that every employee and everyone that's been here is working each and every day as hard as they can to get the lights on.
And we have got an army of crews that are here and that are coming to restore power as quickly and safely as possible.
Appreciate the outpouring of love from our membership.
Y'all got a coffee pot in there? These guys are out there working really hard trying to get us power back, and it's a little something that my wife and I can do to try to help them out.
I want to say thank you for those that have offered to provide meals, help with anything that they could do to assist in the restoration effort.
Thank you very much. If you need some water, you can always, we don't have much, but what we have we'll share with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
We drove through this one neighborhood after restoring power, and the guys, everybody in the neighborhood was just outside, and we drove through, and they were just outside throwing their hands up. People were videoing us and stuff. Wow. It's kind of sending chills through your body.
The cavalry's coming! Woo!
So it was great to see you guys, and I was like, I'm amazed.
This gives me hope. This gives me a lot of joy. I knew they didn't forget about us, but somebody had to be last, so I consider ourselves part of the elite group.
I was glad when I saw them come by here, and about 3 or 4 trucks pulling in out there on the side of the road and 2 coming in my yard. I said, what a blessing. I said, what a blessing. God is good all the time.
Good morning. So we are going
I've lived here my whole life and I've never seen.
What was that? We good? Okay. Good morning. We're going to chat a little bit about mutual aid and Hurricane Helene, but before we do that, I'm going to have the panelists go ahead and introduce themselves. So go ahead, Nick.
Nick Adams. I'm from the Electric Co-ops of South Carolina. I kind of perform the same duties that Dwight does for y'all here at Ohio. I assist with coordinating mutual aid. I'm a former lineman. I'm from a co-op in the state. And this was really the biggest event I've ever been a part of as far as coordination is concerned, as far as my career has been concerned. So, but I got a family, a wife, and a son that's 13. And I was born and raised in South Carolina.
John Wilson, I'm with the Energy Cooperative, crew leader there for 10 years. Wife Ashley and 2 boys, Briar and Brody, 14 and 9. Yeah, they're growing up fast. I don't know, carry on, sorry.
Ken Hunter from Frontier Power Co-op, 35 years, end of this year. And went down the Broad River with Energy Co-op. And I have two kids, Craig and Cassidy. I have 4 grandchildren, 2 boys, Colston and Andrew, and twin granddaughters, Amelia and Avery.
Ben Jones, I'm with South Central Power. I started my career there 10 years ago. Did my apprenticeship through the COLT program. I also have a second job as I'm an instructor at a career and tech center down in Ross County. And this is probably the biggest disaster I've been part of in my career.
Yeah, so on September 25th, we actually got a call from Alabama. And Alabama said we need as many crews as you can get. And remember that, Doug? And anyway, well, we don't pre-stage. And they were wanting us to pre-stage, and that's a decision that was made strategically a number of years ago after an event in Virginia that we had. But with that, we ended up, that didn't come to fruition as the storm, as it kind of worked its way east more and more. And so we ended up getting calls. We were, some of you folks here were at the golf outing, the golf scramble, charity scramble. And so anyway, ended up that morning, getting calls from North Carolina and South Carolina within about 1 minute of each other. And so anyway, we ended up, when it was all over, we ended up helping 7 out-of-state co-ops. We helped 2 in-state co-ops, and 4 of those were in North Carolina, 2 of them were in South Carolina, and 1 of them was in Florida. And all in all, 37% of your workforce actually assisted. So we had 139 linemen actually assisting in the whole of the event. So anyway, with that, so got to talk to Nick a little bit, just because we never really talked about it afterwards until really he came here yesterday. And so, Nick, just kind of like take us through that whole thing. And I know it was tough for you. This was a tough event. But just kind of take us through that whole thing, like how it all kind of evolved, because it was totally by surprise. I know those phone calls I got, everything was totally by surprise that morning, but please take us through that.
Sure, Dwight. Just to give y'all a little backstory, with mutual aid, there's folks like myself and Dwight in other states, and we have meetings with each other whenever events like this are going to take place, specifically predicted events like hurricanes. And a lot of the folks that we deal with are in the Southeast. And, we have calls with them, and we have calls internally as a state. And at the time when this storm was, they'd pretty much directed the path on where it was going, our state honestly was not too concerned. So we had 2 co-ops actually in the state that requested assistance prior to the event happening. And out of that, it was only like 10 or 12 crews that they were looking for. And then all heck broke loose, and I think it was Friday, if I'm not mistaken, the days run together. That Friday morning, when everything came in and it hit Florida, came up through Georgia, I woke up that morning about 4:30. I looked at the outage map. I didn't see the outage numbers wasn't what I was expecting. They were kind of low. I was like, well, that's not too bad. It's not going to be too bad of a day. I said, I'm going to go ahead and get up. I'm going to head into the office and be ready for phone calls later that day. So I get up, get dressed, head out the door, talk to my wife and son, let them know I'm going to be at the office. If they need me, call me. They kind of know the deal because I've been through a few of these before. I get on the road, and the weather outside was not terrible. Within about 20 minutes of driving, the weather went from being, 20-mile-an-hour winds, 30-mile-an-hour winds to 50, 60, 70, 80-mile-an-hour winds real quick. And the closer I got to the office, and I was telling Dwight this earlier, I peaked a hill, and it's like the highest point around the area I live, and it looked like a fireworks show going off across the horizon. And I was like, this is not good. So it got to be pretty dangerous. Then my wife called me and said, hey, listen, our power's out. Just wanted to check on you. This is about 30 minutes of driving. I said, okay, let me turn around and come back and check on y'all. Power's out we're at our facility, so let me just come back and check on y'all, and I'll figure something out from there. It's going to be a long day. The same route that I had taken to get there, I turned around and went back, and I could not travel that same route. It took me, my drive 30 minutes from my house to where I was at, where I turned around, took me an hour and a half to get back home in just that quick a time. That's what surprised me the most. When I got home, I talked to the wife. She said, can you at least turn the generator on? I said, yeah, I tried. No luck there. I said, listen, I got to get to work. Are y'all going to be okay here by yourself? She said, yeah, we got everything we need. You go do what you got to do. Well, there's a local co-op not 8 minutes down the road from my house. And I called them. I said, listen, can I come set up camp at y'all's place? Mid-Carolina Electric Co-op. And they said, yeah, we got our generator running. Come on. And they had a ton of outages too. By 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock that, I think it was Friday, our outage numbers were about a third of our entire state. 425,000 outages. Members with that, 425,000 outages is what I recall at the peak, and that was around lunchtime. And then from there, you start getting phone calls. All right, we need this, we need that, we need, it's tough. And internally in our state, the way we set up our mutual aid, just internal as a group, each person in our department, which there's 4 of them, are assigned to specific co-ops, and they deal directly with those co-ops. I'm getting calls from them saying, listen, Blue Ridge needs this many crews now, Mid-Carolina needs this many. It's just a mass of communication going on and requests coming in, and you don't really know what to do because you got to think about what happened prior. This thing hit Florida and Georgia too. So they pretty much got everything that was within reasonable driving distance to South Carolina. And we take a look at a lot of that whenever we are going through the mutual aid process. So it was kind of a stressful day at first. It took some time, but we eventually worked through it, and we started making phone calls, calling people like Dwight, calling people we've never dealt with before. I mean, we had folks in from Minnesota, South Dakota, Iowa, Kansas. I know some of the contractors that came in from further out west. It was a lot going on to get things get that process rolling. We typically don't coordinate contractors. We were coordinating contractors to come in. It had done got to that point. So that's kind of how it all started, how it all began. I'm sure Dwight's got some other questions that'll probably lead me to talk a little bit more.
So. Nick, well, and we actually have a storm call at 1:30 today. So we got the ice coming into Virginia right now, and you actually have crews headed to Virginia right now.
I was working since Sunday and yesterday on my drive up here to coordinate getting crews, not to come to South Carolina, but leave South Carolina and go assist in Virginia. So we got like 30 some odd linemen, 35 or so going to Virginia today to assist them. So
we're really thankful for him. This was a tough timing for him and everything, yeah. So we're very thankful for that. Could you just kind of take there's a lot of people that maybe don't understand some basics of the mutual aid and how that works, but as far as like when you started making those decisions about like what does that progression look like, Nick? You know, it's like, okay, now I'm calling this state, now I'm calling this state.
I like to, for me personally, from my experience, I like to keep things as simple as possible in this situation because it is a stressful situation. If you start complicating things, it makes that stressful situation worse. So I try to keep things as simple as I can. And usually I just work from our state and just kind of work out. That's the easiest thing I can do. I even contacted Georgia, and they got hit too, and he was willing to share some Alabama folks with us because he had gotten a lot of folks. So that's where that having those relationships with other folks like Dwight and like those other statewide coordinators, that's where those building those relationships with those people, it really comes in handy. He was willing to split those crews up that he was going to get from Alabama and let us have some of those just so we could have some help initially. Because at the time we weren't able to get a whole lot of help in because a lot of it had been used elsewhere. And then that's when it started making those calls, reached out, you know, hey, reached out to Tennessee, is there anything y'all can do? Do y'all still have any availability? Hey, Kentucky, is there anything y'all can do? We kind of worked our way up. Hey, Virginia, is there anything y'all can do? And kind of worked our way west. Ohio came into play. And I knew some of the other states had already sent people, so I knew I couldn't really contact them. They done sent most of their workforce to Florida or Georgia. So it's just kind of working our way further out west, you know, coordinating those efforts.
And it's interesting because, you know, if we would have went to Alabama, if we'd have pre-staged in Alabama, there's a lot of pressure. Understand that when we get called, you know, and Alabama says, we are counting on you in Indiana. We got to have your help. I mean, there's just a lot of pressure there. It's like, well, you want to help, you know. But had we gone to Alabama, we'd have had to go through all the damage and we had to go through all that mess in Georgia with all those closed roads and everything, and then to try to get over to the Carolinas to get where we were actually needed. So we were actually able to respond quicker than if we had pre-staged.
Exactly.
Which is pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing considering the damage because it just wasn't our state. I mean, you had other states that were damaged. North Carolina had all that flooding. And driving up here is the first time I got to see some of what happened in North Carolina. And I was completely shocked that after 2.5, 3 months, it still looks the way it does. It is unreal at what the flooding did, you know. But kind of going back to Dwight's point, it was just nice to be able to have the folks like Dwight, the folks from other states, to be able to contact and say, listen, we're in need. Is there any help that you can provide? What can you provide? And then being willing to do that, even if it was, like South Dakota said, a 3-day drive. So.
And I just want to commend Nick. Nick was fantastic. He was so busy. He was fantastic to work with in the storm, and that was why, you know, it's like, oh, we got to get Nick in, because Nick was just so great to work with. I'd never worked with Nick before in a storm, so this was the first time, and it was just great. So, thank you much. So we had 2 of these guys were in South Carolina, 1 in North Carolina. So we're going to kind of get the feel of, like, you know, that heavy tree damage in South Carolina, and then that flooding damage and tree damage in North Carolina. So, Ken, you led the crews at Broad River. And you guys did a ton of intense 3-phase work, much in the right-of-way there. So, you know, with that kind of work, I mean, like, how did that compare to, like, some of the other stuff that you've done?
Well, I was just going to start kind of when we got down there. We all got down there within about an hour of each other. And big old pile of stuff laying on the end of the dock, and they wanted us to get a 50-foot pole and go out to the first spot. You know, mind you, fall of the year, it's getting dark a little early. So we go out and we see these 4 spans of double circuit 336 on the ground. We was able to winch in and get the pole set. Round to the corner as that line goes on down, and then they sit there and say, well, we're going to be back here tomorrow. So we worked there all day the next day, working on that double circuit, climbing poles. And from there on, at the end of that day, we was able to get to that first set of switches to get 700 people on. And that there just gives you that intense feeling that, hey, you know, we're gaining on it already. So it's, for me, that's what we went down there for, to progress and help people.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you. What's your main motivation? You know, I mean, to go down there, because you guys are Frontier is so responsive on mutual aid. You guys are the first ones that I call if it's anywhere close to you guys, because you guys are so responsive.
we're fortunate to have guys that, you know, and I can't speak for them, but for me, it was always a privilege to go out of town and to assist the co-op members. Southern hospitality is, you can go to Southern hospitality and they're just above everything. I mean, they're always thanking, what can I do for you? That's not the case on some places we've went before. But the Southern hospitality, it's an honor to go out, and that's, for me, it's a service. I mean, that's my whole career has been service, to serve the members, the trade I'm in, to help them out by providing electricity for them. And to me, it's an honor to go to the battle. That's what this was. It was a battle. Go into battle with your fellow brother and you know, see it from start to finish. And that's what we did down at Broad River.
So, you know, you're pretty well known for your efficiency and getting quite a bit done, Ken, okay? So with that, so, you know, I mean, with getting a lot of work done and trying to get, you know, and trying to make good progress, I mean, like, how is that as far as like on a storm like this with safety? There's so many variables, so many hazards that you're dealing with, but yet you're trying to get the lights on. So, I mean, what does that all look like with safety?
Going down as a supervisor and leading 12 other men, you know, it's a little bit of I don't know, it's something on your shoulders. You're taking them with you. You also want to bring them back. But like you said, you know, as long as everybody's following the tag, the ground, the testing, and just always looking out for your fellow person and just checking it out. And for me, it was, I'm the type of person got one more in you, you know, that's at the end of the day, hey, always looking for a way to work more efficient. I know the one morning I was getting a little flustered. There was 300 men in there. The parking lot was a traffic, and we was boxed in. Well, the next morning I got off Bird Dog. I said, show me the next line. We went in that evening, got loaded up, and pretty much we met at the job site. We bypassed going there in the morning because there were so many people there. It was just it's chaos. So that's part of, but the big thing was everybody I took down there with, I wanted to bring back. And it's a problem solving. You go down there and every situation's different. And so that's, hopefully I answered your question.
John, what do you think about that? You got, you know, you worked for Ken, so I won't ask you what he was like to work for, okay? So, but with that, you know, so I mean, with that, I mean, kind of lean in on that a little bit. You've worked a lot of storms in your contract career, right? Mm-hmm. And so with that, like, I mean, how do you see that, like, on these storms as far as brothers in arms, being your brother's keeper and that type of thing?
Storm as a contractor and storm as a co-op employee are night and day different. Storm as a contractor, we would show up, you'd stage in a parking lot. Sometimes we'd wait a day or so until our contacts would get the work. Then as a co-op employee, we showed up, we were the first ones at Broad River. Yeah. It was a vacant parking lot. We rolled in and they, like Ken said, they had a job ready for us. And within the hour, we were rolling to that first job. And you know, what you were talking about with Ken getting the work, you know, that was huge because we're there a limited time. We need to get as much done safely as we possibly can. So if, you know, Ken was running out ahead of us and, you know, we got this job done, he already had the next one lined up, which sometimes doesn't sound great, but I was there to work. And, you know, and we talked about it a lot. It was, you know, we wanted to do our best job for that co-op because if we're ever in a position, we want them to do the best job for us. And that's the whole co-op principle. You know, we're, you know, as a family, you know, whether it's South Carolina co-ops or your neighbor co-op, we're all, like he said, brothers. Yeah. And, you know, we were, with that also being said, we all worked so well together. The communication was wide open. I mean, there was no issues with, and sometimes that's what you know, like you talked about with Guatemala, there were no issues because you didn't have, no one's ego got in the way. And that happens sometimes, just like you said. So it's a whole bunch of alpha males, and we're there to do a job. So you set your ego aside, you look at the safety of yourself and your brother, and you get the job done, you go home.
Yeah, I love that. It's just the selfless, the whole selfless act of being there and kind of reminding yourself why you're there and everything, that you're there for the greater good. And yeah, there's a lot of proud guys, right? You know, in those storms, and so well said. So I'm gonna put you on the spot, Nick. Okay. So how these guys? Did you get any feedback on our guys?
I did get some feedback from Mr. Carey at Broad River.
Okay. So let's hear it, man. I haven't heard it.
His exact words. You tell them Ohio fellers, they can come back to Broad River anytime they like. Good group of guys. That's exact words. So
he didn't say go fishing. You can come fishing. He said.
I really feel like that first job was a tester.
Oh, yeah.
Because after we got through it, it was, you know, we had created a name for ourselves, and then it was on.
For me, I mean, it sounded like, when we first seen it, it was like, wow. But send me to the toughest. That's what I want to do. I want to get the most people on, no matter where it's at, no matter how they get there. We can run a set of hooks. Everybody I took down there runs hooks. And if we couldn't get truck to it, we was going to figure out a way to do it. And we did, and that was a big challenge. That first 2 days was the biggest challenge that we had, and the rest of it was just a regular storm damage to me.
It was unbelievable how quick it dried out.
Yeah.
We would have never gotten trucks to places here that we did there, ever.
Yeah. And we had we have a bigger digger and a smaller digger, and I purposely I said, I'm gonna put that small digger down there because we're gonna winch that thing out. And by luck,
it drove out, and I got stuck.
Yeah. So it was.
In all seriousness, thank y'all for coming to help. I know Kerry and Mr. Terry, their CEO, he really appreciated y'all answering the call. So thank you again. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. The Southern hospitality, like Ken said, they were awesome down there too.
Yeah.
Every one of their employees.
John, just one more question for you here. So, you know, you got to work around some close co-ops. I mean, was that pretty cool to be able to get to know those guys, you know, better, you know, those neighboring co-ops? It was kind of a rare situation. It just kind of happened, not purposely at all. But go ahead and talk about it.
Oh, absolutely. Like I had not worked around the Frontier guys hardly at all. And I mean, came out of it with a great relationship with Ken. I mean, we talk probably weekly.
And then Guernsey.
And yeah, in Guernsey. And I knew some of those guys. I mean, I live on Guernsey system. So it's reassuring knowing the caliber of guy that's keeping my lights on also. And yeah, it really was a great group of guys, like hand-picked great group of guys.
Yep. I'd take all you guys back down there again to the next battle. I mean, I really would.
I tell you, and linemen are the same everywhere. You know, I get to see a lot of linemen all over. You know, we went down to, I was actually in Guatemala with that group of linemen from Oklahoma because we did that in partnership. That Project Ohio was in partnership with Oklahoma. And so I was there at the inauguration in October, and those guys were awesome. I mean, just an amazing group of guys, and it's just like our group of guys. You know, it's like linemen are I just love linemen wherever you go. So, Ben, it's your turn. So you came a little bit later, okay? And so you guys had a lot of trouble. You guys had a mess after Hurricane Helene. It just spanked, you know, Adams and South Central and Buckeye, and we gave help to Adams and Buckeye. You guys able to do it on your own with, you know, by getting all your crews together and everything. And so you guys get all finished up. I say, hey, we need more crews if you can. And so sure enough, South Central steps up and sends a massive amount of crews. You're in that bunch. And so anyway, you know, you're of the bunch here, you're the only one that really was in that flooding territory. So, I mean, just kind of tell your experience, you know, like when you first got there, kind of just like what you saw and what you experienced with that flooding portion.
Yeah, so we left the co-op. It's usually about a 6-hour drive down there to Blue Ridge, North Carolina, right outside of Boone. I think it took us about 8.5 hours because all the roads closed. You got to remember we went in a week after the hurricane hit, so it was when we started getting into the North Carolina part, it was I don't even know how to explain it. You're talking picking roads up and swinging them down the road to the river a half a mile. It's just roads gone, bridges gone. It's very eye-opening to me. The flooding is just unbelievable. We were down into a valley at the flooding stage, got up to 29 feet. So like I said, it took us a while to get down there, and once we got settled in, we got our orders. It was very, very rough to figure out what we were going to do and how we were going to approach this safely. And but back to the southern part, they treated us very well down there. I don't think did not hear one negative thing. It was all thanks. So that was a huge part to me that makes me want to work even harder. So that's kind of how we came into it. Very, very eye-opening.
So I came down and visited the cruise a couple different times, and the one time I visited the cruise at French Broad, and that's where the damage was the worst for our crews were. And so you guys I was 20 miles from where your crews were. And so my goal was, I was actually able to find a place to stay that night, and then my goal was to get to you guys' cruise, see how things were going for y'all, and I had 20 miles to go. And I started worrying when Google Maps told me that it couldn't find a way there. And so anyway, I went out, I drove 3 hours, and if I would have broke down, I don't know how long it would have taken them to find me, because I was in the most remote parts of North Carolina that I've ever seen. So with that, after 3 hours of the closed roads, some of the saddest things that you've ever seen, just with these roads just washed out. And even the roads that were open were one lane where half the road was washed out. Anyway, I finally gave up after 3 hours. It's not that I gave up because, I didn't want to, I just didn't want to go longer. I didn't know a way to get there. I had tried every way. That road right there that you're looking at, I took that right as I was actually leaving. I'm going, well, I should take a picture of one of these roads so that you can kind of see what these roads look like, because that's just what so many of the roads right there look like. And so, and the rest, at least one lane was open on that one. And so, but with that, it's the roads closed, the infrastructure gone, that'll never be replaced. And so to hear when they're still talking about these folks from North Carolina, it's very real fact, I mean that when you're talking about, like you talked about the railroad that's in the river, there it is right there. You got the railroad, no, I can't tell if that is or not right there. But anyway, that one there was actually in Tennessee. I started heading home. I'm going, I got to try to get home. I couldn't get home. Tennessee, southern Tennessee was all messed up. And so I finally ended up putting my lights on top of my vehicle. I put my strobes on. They thought I was OSHA, and I went on through. So I got home. But with that, so talk about, Ben, talk about your main motivation. Why did you help? I mean, you guys were tired, you guys were beat. And so what motivated you to be part of that group, that went on down?
Coming off the storm at South Central, when I got that call, it was an automatic yes. To be able to go help people that their lives are back to square one. I mean, there's nothing left of their homes. They don't even know where their homes are. So just to be able to not just give them electricity, but just to go say a prayer with them, or even just talk them through how you're fortunate just to be alive. So that's really hit home with me, is to be able to go help people, not just electricity, but to make them feel like they still have a life ahead of them.
So I'm going to open this up to any of you. So the safety of the crews working around you. I mean, what did you get a sense of? We've been on storms before where things have not always been good, around. So how was the safety? How did you feel the safety was of everybody that you were working around? We heard about an electrical contact where Pike or someone, we believe that it was They said that, you know, contractor where they had 5 guys involved in a electrical contact right after the storm hit. And so, you know, with that, I didn't put that out or anything because it's like, you know, hey guys, you got to make sure you keep your act together well because there's so many hazards, you know. But with that, like, I mean, what did you guys see in that? How did you guys experience that? Any of you?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to safety on a storm, everybody has to be a leader. Everybody has to stand up and say, hey, listen, we have to ground multiple places. We have to worry about backfeed. We have to worry about our hot boots, our proper PPE. You also got to have an open mind. You got to, like I said, there's tons of guys that come in from all over the United States with all kinds of opinions. We have to be open-minded when it comes to safety. I mean,
yeah, and so when you get down there and you start to work, and then you think, who's working around me? Number one. So then you have to protect yourself. So Ken was running, checking open points, because at the start of it, the mapping was pretty lackluster, honestly. So we had to trust what Glenn said. So
yeah, good bird dogs, everything too.
100%.
I mean, we had, or I don't want to interrupt you or anything.
No, go ahead.
Glenn, our bird dog, he would always say, "What do you think, Glenn?" And he says, "Well, it lasts 60 more days, 'cause that's when I retire." That's what he would always say. But his phone would ring constantly from the line supervisor, from the office, from other linemen. I mean, he was the go-to guy down there, and we had him as a bird dog. And you don't know how that makes you feel safety-wise, where stuff's at. But you know,
he knew every inch of that system.
Yeah, he knew that was his area, and he knew it, and it was to have somebody like that. That's a boost too. That's definitely a win.
Their system had a lot of tie points. It's very similar to ours. You know, a lot of things can be backfed. So with him being able to get us to those spots, we could verify our stuff. And then, you know, entrust in Ken, because a lot of times we weren't going to carpool 8 trucks following him. So, you know, Ken's doing our verification, we're doing our testing and grounding at our locations. You know, he's tagging and locking out the devices. And again, just like what I was talking about with it being, the communication was huge. It's so big. You just guys have to fill you in on every aspect of it.
And Ohio, in my eyes, Ohio sets the bar. I mean, we're trained to do what we do, and we're fortunate that, you know, everybody does what they do, and to cross your T, dot your I's 100% on these storms.
No offense.
No offense. I mean, we were just talking there back there. I feel that Ohio sets the bar. We take that as a pride to go in a place. You know, we've been, like you said, Frontiers went to Michigan. I've been to Michigan 2 Christmases in a row and worked with Michigan up there, because they can't get crews. But Ohio sets the bar. I really do. I think we have a good reputation, and I'd like to try to keep it that way.
It's all about open tag testing ground, right?
Yep.
I mean,
100%.
It's like open tag testing ground. You got to get the basics. So Nick, I'm going to go back to you.
Yes.
So this was you expressed to me how difficult this was personally, just because it was just really hard on you for a 3-week period.
Mm-hmm.
So would you talk about that just a little bit, and how it impacted your family and that type of thing? Just kind of so that people can kind of understand just the battles that are fought behind, behind the scenes.
I will. It's when you're in this position of coordinating folks coming in, and you got multiple cooperatives relying on you to find outside help, because we know inside help's not going to be available for a while. It really puts a lot of pressure on you in that role to do that, because again, just like these guys, we're all service oriented up here. Every one of us are. And that stress of this being put on you, it just builds and builds and builds. All right, and I know the co-ops are feeling the stress too, because they have members that are putting that stress on them. Hey, when's my power going to get back on? When's my power going to get back on? So it's all a trickle-down effect. But I will say some things that really helped me with that was, you know, typically that morning we'd have our calls with the co-ops, get an assessment. Do you need additional support? You know, we got support coming from here, here, and here to your folks. And when we got done with those calls that morning, typically up till lunchtime, myself and another employee at Statewide, since we were the local co-op, we'd go out and help them. That really alleviated some of that stress. You know, it was back to what got me in this industry to begin with, doing line work. So it really helped with that, being able to get back out, getting around the community, providing that service. That really helped. And I think our CEO at our organization and my immediate boss, I think they saw that because it did get stressful at times for, you know, being on that end, and you're trying to please everybody, and it's hard to do that with 18 distribution co-ops and, you know, in South Carolina. So you can't please everybody. And, you know, it was that's what really helped. Another thing too, it was stressful on my family, but I will say one thing about my family. I heard a lot today with the guys that went to and helped and assisted in Guatemala. My wife is very supportive of what I do. My son is very supportive of what I do. They know my job. And I will say every evening when I got back in from going out with some of these crews and bird dogging or helping or doing whatever it may be for the local co-op there, they were there every evening assisting, helping, serve dinner to the guys coming in that came in to help that co-op. Every evening, my wife and my son were there, so I got to see them and they got to experience it. And I think it was a very good experience for my son at 13 years old to see that, to see what community means, to see what service means. I'm very proud of him for that. I'm very proud of my wife and all of them. And it gave me time to spend with them in the evenings, dog tired, dead beat. But it's you know, when you see that and you see them putting in the effort, it really, you know, it gives you that little extra. Yeah, I can do this. This is what I'm meant to do. So that's what I take away from that event. Yes, it was a big event. Do I ever want to go through one again? No. I don't think anybody in here does. But it was a very good experience. And, you know, I felt like in some instances, I feel like we failed in some instances. You know, we had some initial requests that we didn't fulfill initially. And we will learn from that, and we will try to make that better in the future. Hopefully we can be better prepared next time. Again, I will tell you, nobody in our state but maybe 2 co-ops were worried. I would say 2 co-ops out of the 18 were the only ones worried about this storm. Everybody else thought it was going to be and that's the way even some of the people at the state offices, emergency management division, they didn't foresee this. Nobody did. So I think in the end, just being better prepared for something like this, if it ever comes about, it will be on everybody's radar, you know, for a while. And there's still some processes internally as our state that we're probably going to look at and try to, you know, tweak to make things better, because that's how you learn. You know, this is a learning experience.
So Ken, he talked about some lessons learned. I know you just said something to me here, just back here a little bit ago, and kind of about the fuel and stuff. I mean, could you just kind of talk about that, something that you could kind of take away from it personally?
Well, the one thing that really helped the co-op, which was 4 years old, they had a fuel station, and the one down the road, the one gas station that had emergency power, they had flaggers out there around the clock. They were going in and out. They could get fuel, but there wasn't anybody else around. If we had to wait in line to get in there to fuel up, the co-op had that, and that's something that I'm going to take back to my facility and maybe get with, because we got one facility in our town that's got emergency power, but you know, you didn't think about how everybody's going to get gas for a generator is lined up, you know, halfway down the street, how long that's going to take for us to go in there and get fuel. And that would have been huge. It would have been hours to waiting in line probably to get fuel. And that's one thing that I seen that that I'm gonna take back and maybe take some contacts for our facility. Hope we never have that kind of thing, but that's
Y'all
huge.
come down to vacate. We won't work. Vacation.
Oh, we've got about a minute and a half, Ben. So what's a main memory you're going to take away from here?
Main memory that I'm probably going to take is we left an impression on their life down there that will probably stick with them forever. And I'm extremely proud to be part of that. And I want to thank OEC and all the co-ops for giving us the opportunity to go down and assist with that.
John, you got anything to share?
No, basically what he said. You know, we know we have a skill set that's needed in these times, and it's our duty to take it wherever it needs.
Okay. With that, would you give these folks a round of applause?